Missouri City Recreation and Leisure Local Government Corporation meeting to order at 5:16 p.m. Item number 2, our discussion and possible action. 2A. Do we have public comments for this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Nicholas Sear has signed up to speak on an item 2A.
2A?
Yes, sir.
Item 2A? Okay.
Mr.
So do
Sear?
we,
Please state your name and address for the record, and please adhere to the 3-minute time limit. Mayor.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Nicholas Sire. I'm here representing myself as a registered voter in Missouri City, Texas. I realize in a few moments we'll hear a presentation about the Quail Valley Golf Course and have several updates about a variety of topics. I had several thoughts that I wanted to share. At this point, I don't believe that presentation has been publicly shared on the agenda portal. In my mind, it would have been nice to have at least 72 hours in advance to review it per the Texas Open Meetings Act policy, but that's a conversation for another day. So considering the Quail Valley Golf Course, I realized that there was a general manager who was there for many years. He had left on for other professional opportunities, and then there was a new general manager who came on board. And unfortunately, that general manager was in that role for less than 1 year. I'm not obviously familiar with all the reasons why that individual left the Quail Valley Golf Course, and that I realize it's a sensitive HR matter. I hope that everyone on City Council has asked some insightful questions to understand why, and so that we can do better as a city to manage and prosper with that amenity in Missouri City, Texas. I do hear recurring themes of profitability when it comes to the Quail Valley Golf Course. Hopefully there is some healthy debate happening about how we achieve that profitability, especially when you take simple economics lessons and more advanced economic lessons about supply and demand and the various groups that use the facility, the revenue either directly or indirectly that they use through word of mouth or during the actual events that take place there. I look forward to hearing the presentation and working with everyone going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, that concludes comments.
so City Manager, I do have a question on this, but once we get to 2A, are these posted?
Yes, they are.
They are posted? So they've been posted?
Yes.
Where was it posted?
So, Mr. Mayor, in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the agendas are posted online, and they are posted on the bulletin board downstairs. By law, we're required to post the agenda. We're not required to post the backup.
Okay, so presentations you're not allowed per state law?
We're not required.
Okay, and that gets presented here, but the notice has been presented.
Yes, sir, 72 hours in advance.
And can you also, Joyce, let us know, I don't see a public comment here for this item and why this was addressed.
Certainly. Although the public comment section does not appear on this agenda, state law does require the governing body to allow the public to provide testimony, essentially to speak on items that are posted on an agenda. So that is why an individual can sign up and still talk about an item that has actually been posted on the agenda.
Okay, so moving forward, that we will have on items such as this that, that people could speak to on any item.
Yes, sir, we will include public comments.
All right, I just want to make sure we clarify with even amongst ourselves so we know what we're doing. Okay.
Yes.
All right, item 2A is discussion and receive presentation, Quail Valley Golf Course updates. We have a presentation by Donnie Hayes, Director of Parks and Recreation. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I did just want to start my presentation off by saying go 49ers. It is a California team, the red and gold. But anyways, I am excited later on to see Anaya Smith and the presenting of the key. That's pretty exciting things. So I'm here today to present on the Quail Valley Golf Course. When I was asked to fill this temporary position, I was asked to do a couple of things, specifically to look at a true budget review of the golf course, begin the process of looking at profitability and giving an assessment of where we're at and what we could do. Also to present some staffing recommendations for the facilities. And then also to look at a couple other things. Number one, policy and procedures. And then lastly, infrastructure management. And so tonight I'm just going to present to you guys some of the findings that are starting to come out through that work. And so the first one is to discuss a budget review. So first of all, after the first 2 quarters of this year, currently our expenditures are to about $2.3 million, whereas our revenue for the golf course is $2.05. Also, one of the questions that has been asked of me is, Donnie, how much have we spent on goods through the products and merchandise that have the new, well, the logo? We'll just say the logo. And so wanted to give you guys an update that the course did spend about $124,000 on new goods that had that new logo on it. Currently, right now, generation of revenue is about $108,000 over this past year as that merchandise has come out.
Question, do we have inventory on hand to be sold so it'll generate more revenue?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would just ask if we can let you finish your presentation, so I'm sure all of us will have questions.
You bet.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry about that, Mayor.
No, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So I also wanted to present to you guys just an overview of our 4-year broken down into quarters. One of the question marks that I had when I first came on was, where does the revenue look like throughout these quarters? Do we have typical low quarters? Do we have typical high quarters? And so I began breaking out the revenue in these quarters so I could look at that a little bit more holistically. As you can see here, typically our quarter 2, which is the quarter that we just finished, typically is a smaller quarter. But also another thing that we learned as we were really starting to focus on this data is that we are seeing a trend of our revenues being lower than our expenditures. And so that was a big light bulb moment for myself and the staff as we were really beginning to look at this information. And so when we start looking at the budget and the revenue, then we start asking ourselves, how can we be more profitable? One of the ways that we can be more profitable is to have a stronger handle on our expenses. We need to look at them daily. We need to be able to review them. We need to understand them. Staff needs to be monitoring them and looking at what those trends are. Furthermore, we need to be evaluating comparables, looking at additional food and beverage suppliers and what the products are and what our benefits are, and really focusing on those cost of goods that are being used at the facility and making sure that we really have a strong handle on our expenses. Another way is for us to really focus on marketing. We need to have a true monthly marketing plan, something that the course doesn't have right now. And so that is something that we are working on. We're spending a lot of time saying, how do we get the word out? How do we increase the numbers of people that are attending the golf course? Who is coming and renting our facilities? Another one is a huge push on weddings. Currently, over the last year, we've only had 6 weddings at the golf course. Golf course of that structure and that nature really should be a wedding-centered facility. And so how do we do that? Right now in the state of Texas, the average cost for a wedding is $27,000. Right now, in those 6 weddings that we've done, our average cost has been $12,000. So how do we address that type of a gap? How do we increase that demand? How do we look at that? So one of the things that we've set as a goal for ourselves is to, number one, increase our averages to $15,000 per wedding, and then also increase the number of weddings by 30% over this next year. And then we start looking at food and beverage sales. Things that we can do that we are currently not doing is, number one, looking at theme nights. When the Super Bowl is happening, there should be an event that's happening at the facility that you can go and experience the Super Bowl, or the Final Four, or the Masters, or the list goes on and on and on, that we could be able to actually be using that patio area for a lot of community events and activities. Another area of focus is looking at these places like Uber Eats and Grubhub. Currently, we do not have any sort of delivery system. for the restaurant. Grubhub claims that just by taking on and doing Grubhub, that you can increase your takeout orders by 30%. For us, that would not be very hard to do since we have no takeout orders. And so that would be a significant increase for us to look at. Another one is increased hours at the bar, where we minimize staffing and offerings, but at the same time still increase the amount of opportunities for people to be able to attend and be able to use that facility, especially on Fridays and Saturday nights. So our goal is to increase our food and beverage sales by 10% over the next 6 months. We also want to evaluate our food options and streamline our menu so we can actually have a profitability of about 30% of goods sold. The next one is to look at the golf course. Our tee sheet at the golf course is a significant producer of revenue. And so we need to focus on that break even on the golf side of the business. And what does that look like? We also need to evaluate those revenues according to wear and tear on the course. One of the first things I said is we need to look at expenses. The more people that you have going through the course, the more wear and tear that you also have on the course, which increases expenses. And so you have to find that balance and look at how that actually works for us. Next thing is we need to start looking at things like cross-promotional sales. Saturdays, lunch and golf, or a stay and play with some of our hotels. And so we need to really begin focusing on reaching out to the community and finding ways to be able to expand the amount of golf that is happening. Right now, we have a goal of 5,000 rounds per month. Currently, right now, we're averaging, in the quarter one, we averaged 5176. In quarter two, that dropped to 4,668 rounds per month. Now, we did have a very cold January, and so we only saw 3,226 rounds during that month, but that is a goal of ours, to be able to always, every single month, to be meeting that 5,000 rounds goal. The second one is $37 on a monthly average on revenue per round. Currently, we're averaging about $33 to $34 per month. And so our goal is to really to begin to increase that. And when you're looking at that number, the things that we balance in there is your tournaments that right now are averaging about $60 per round, to other scenarios where you're looking at some rounds that are about $13 per round on average. And so we need to find that middle ground for us to be able to make sure that we're meeting that $37 per monthly revenue goal. I wanted to show you just a kind of a breakdown over the last 3 years, the trends that we're looking at. In 2022 is the green line. You can see that we were right there on that goal of that 5,000 rounds per month. Then you look at 2023 and you start seeing that dip. That dip continued into 2024. Just remember that January number of the really cold month. That's why you see that number so low, but you still see a dip. Just got the April numbers, and we did see that number continue to climb for 2024, so we're pretty happy to see that moving upwards. But this is a trend that we really need to be able to focus on, is making sure that we're not dipping below those 5,000 rounds per month. Next thing, just a couple of things to just look at as far as goals-wise for us. One of the things that we really want to focus on over the next 6 months during food and beverage is to increase by about $1,000. That's one of our goals. Another one of our goals, profitability, looking at increasing our revenues by $75,000 on the golf side over the next 6 months. This next graph that you're looking at is actually looking at the fiscal gaps over the last 6 years for the golf course. So back in 2017, you can see the revenues and expenses. There was a loss of about $29,000. 2018, just over $300,000. 2019, a loss of $77,000. 2022, of course, with COVID, $240,000. And then there was a, the city actually came in, and there was a $420,000 revenue line item that came from the general fund that went into the LGC. And so that's where you start seeing this change in that revenue number. There was a significant cash flow that went in from the general fund to the LGC. So you see a couple of years of profitability as it's balancing on those numbers, and then we're back down in 2023. So that's a trend that we just have to fix. Looking at staffing. As we're looking at the staffing, the process that we really focused on is, number one, having our management team really create this weekly log, focusing on what their management level duties are, and then looking at job descriptions, focusing on those, reviewing those. And then I met with each one of those staff members to go over their job duties, to look at their logs, and to say, okay, where is this matching up between what you're doing versus what you're expected to do on your job description versus what you thought you were supposed to be doing in this position? And so really having that discussion holistically between the staff and myself and trying to get a really good idea of what the expectations were for those staff. And then began setting staff goals, with each one of them. At this point, some of the recommendations that I would really focus on, one of the things that I heard from both talking to the two previous general managers and then also to staff is that there is a need for a focus on HR, finance, and marketing in the department. And there needs to be some help. And so I would suggest that we add an assistant general manager over there. I would also recommend that we reorganize management in general from supervisors and really focus more on staff training and management priorities. A lot of staff are in the day-to-day weeds and are not planning for the future and really looking at how to make this facility profitable because they're so focused on the day-to-day actions. Next thing is to eliminate the second golf pro position that is currently vacant. And one of the reasons to do that is actually to start having some more staff that are the goer and doers rather than necessarily our managers. Also, we need to solidify our tournament director and assistant pro expectations. That's been an issue for the last little while, and focusing on what that looks like. I would also recommend that we move the event sales staff out from underneath food and beverage and move it directly underneath the general manager so that those staff members can be more of a service to the facility and golf as a whole rather than just food and beverage. And then the last thing is to really improve the GM and assistant GM benefit options that are over at that facility. This is just a general idea of what that would look like if we would made some of those changes. Your three different levels of colors are your executive level staff in the green, then your directors in the black, and then your other supervisors in the blue, and then your staff in the orange. Next thing that I've been asked to look at, review, and begin creating is this policy development. So some of the things that we've looked at already is establishing a policy, or establishment and distribution of policy. So how do you distribute policies? And so then we've also begun looking at the personnel policy, created a cash handling policy and procedure. We're looking at position controls, a donation policy and procedure, accounts payable policy, player assistant and training policy, tournament policy and procedures, manager on duty policy and procedures, naming rights. These are all things that right now that are really necessary for the true organization to prosper. And then also we're looking at the infrastructure right now. So our top 5 infrastructure projects, without a doubt, is this new La Quinta renovation and drainage project that's coming out. We are well on our way. Public Works is really close on getting the 100% designs here in the next couple of months. So then we can come back to the community and start really talking about what those designs look like. The maintenance building is actually in review in the city permits department and planning to be able to make sure that the actual drawings for that is in place and correct. And then we're also looking at the Cartwright landscaping project to make sure that we actually tie the golf course into Cartwright and making sure that that is continues to be a beautiful hole that everyone can be proud of. Currently, I actually have a meeting with the HOA board for Quail Valley tomorrow night to talk about that even further as we're looking for partners that would help us with that project. Next one is the driving range drainage project. That is an issue that needs to be looked at and addressed. And the last one is updating the venue spaces in the city center themselves. And so those are our top 5 infrastructure projects that we really need to be focusing on. Lastly, just here are some of the projects the staff have been able to accomplish over the last little bit. Restroom doors on the course have been fixed. That has been a big complaint over the last 6 months. We're currently replacing all the fans on the patio. The arbor that is out in the courtyard is going to have a nice little update so it can be a major wedding focus for the community. We're fixing all the patio TVs. The range netting project is finished. The erosion control on holes 5 and 18 of El Dorado are complete as well. And so just really trying to close up some of the gaps that we've had over the last little bit. Lastly, as La Quinta is going to be closing here in next 8 months or so, we did want to bring to you guys a staff suggestion on what to do with tournaments during that La Quinta closure. Want to make you aware of one of the discussions that we're currently having right now. We really want to focus on the fact that tournaments do bring in a decent amount of revenue for the course. At the same time, we don't want to take over those courses and make it so that the community don't have tee times to be able to play. And so to be able to balance those two things, we really want to set in motion a few just guidelines. Number one, tournaments that are happening Monday through Thursday, you have to have at least the minimum of 60 players in that tournament. Number one, to make it valuable for us to be able to close down some tee times to the community. Second thing, Saturday mornings, one of our busiest times of the week, you would have to have at least 100 players and also a full meal plan paid for as well for that to be beneficial to us. Next one is Saturday afternoons, minimum of 80 players and a full meal plan. And then Sundays, there would be no tournaments at all. The other thing that we would look at, because we would be down to one course, we would not have an annual pass sold during that closure. So those are just some of the staff suggestions coming out of that as we're looking at that closure. And then lastly, I just wanted to kind of let you guys know some of the next steps of the things that we're looking at. First of all, we're trying to complete the development of these policies and procedures so those are firm and in place. Really want to finalize the FY25 budget so we can present that to y'all. And then we also are looking at having an LGC staffing retreat and really presenting to you guys and fully fleshing out the future structure of the LGC. That is going to be coming up in next little while. And then lastly, getting that implementation from y'all and direction from y'all after that staff retreat, or that, not staff retreat, but that city council retreat. And so that is the end of my presentation.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hey, Mayor, I would like to ask before we get into comments about this and before we get to item 2B, go and close executive session. I have some questions about our responsibilities as directors of the LGC, as well as getting some insight from our legal.
Sure. So it'd be 551.071. Okay, so the board of directors will go into executive session 551.0771. All right, thank you. Okay, the time is 6:19 p.m. City Council now is back into the LGC Corporation meeting. So item for 2A, thank you, Donnie. So we're good. Item 2B, our consideration and possible action to authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to negotiate and execute a contract for reliable goods not to exceed $450,000 annually with Cisco Food Distributor and Restaurant Supplies to purchase supplies as needed. Is there a motion?
Yeah.
A motion by Councilmember Maroulis, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Clauser. Are there any questions? Seeing no one else on the queue, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. So the time is 6:20. With no further business, this meeting is adjourned.